This is the JWN podcast. Chad Dyer is a photographer, musician, and artist who found his way into a career in professional photography by working at a photography studio before he even owned a camera. After he did get his own gear, he decided to take an adventure and capture landscapes across America, Thailand, and Bali. His love of capturing spaces landed him a career in architectural and real estate photography. He recently tapped into his love of art and artists to help organize the For Love of Art Arts Festival in Charleston, South Carolina, and that's where our conversation begins. I hope you enjoy this hangout between two guys with very similar artistic passions. So without further ado, here's my conversation with Chad Dyer. Welcome to the show.
Thanks.
Took me long enough to get you in here.
Hey man, I was waiting for you. Apparently you're waiting for me. I don't know.
No, I'm a terrible host. I was like, dude, come on whenever you want. Hold on, I got something for you. Uh-oh. And this is from somebody who was on the show pretty recently.
Oh, what is this?
So,
dude. Oh my gosh, Schuler. Dude. That is awesome. I literally just saw this on Instagram the other day and I was going to buy one.
Oh, sorry, Gil. You can still buy
one. I can still buy it. Yeah, exactly. Yes. They're great for gifts. This is awesome. This is amazing.
Well, he came in to the show and I pre-ordered one and then he came in to do the show and he brought me a copy. So now I had two copies and I was holding on to one. I was like, I got to give this to somebody who will appreciate it.
Very much,
I was just like, you know what? Especially after this past weekend and what you put together, I was like, no one's going to appreciate this more.
You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, absolutely. Dude, well, Barn Jam, like in general anyway, Allendale is just such a rad place and it holds a lot of really cool memories, especially from like first moving here, you know?
Yeah.
And just Eddie White is amazing and all of the posters are so fun and the design work is just awesome anyway. So this is really exciting. Yeah. This is awesome, man. And I love just the cover even.
Right.
Like the flying V and the fish.
I talked to him at length about just the idea of every week he comes up with a new poster idea.
Right.
And he started with a theme and then he just started to expand from there. And so he had these constraints that he was giving himself. Then he started kind of building out because the constraint of building for the same venue every week, it was something, a project, a passion project.
That's awesome.
And that's something that, that you're kind of, something I believe that you have an advantage over a lot of people that are into photography.
Thank you.
Let's just work in reverse here. So we're going to start from the present and try to work our way back here. But I just referenced this past weekend. You are kind of the reason why this art show at Tradesman Brewing happened, right? You were one of the people who.
Yeah, sort of. I mean,
explain to me how it came together. I just know that your name's attached to it, so I might be giving you too much credit or not enough. I don't know.
I appreciate it. There's so much credit that goes out to so many people, but the way it started, honestly, was Sarah Gail McConnell, one of the owners over at Tradesman.
Yeah,
and I were sitting on the back patio one day, just having a conversation. This is probably maybe like 2 months ago. And she was like, a little background. About 2 years ago when I finally kicked off, I originally started doing photography in like 2012 and did it full time, but I worked for someone else. I worked in a studio. So this was like 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, I started out doing photography for myself full time. But when I launched from that, I was actually leaving Tradesman. I had just gotten back into the States a few months before, had just gotten back into Charleston. I literally first place I drove into Charleston was Tradesman Brewing and walked out with paperwork for a job because I was like, well, I'm going to need a job if I'm moving back to Charleston. And had worked for Westbrook before, so I had that kind of, in my back pocket. So anyway, Sarah Gail was an excellent, employer, her and Scott and Chris. And we're all still really tight. And so Sarah Gail was just like, hey, man, I would really love if you brought some art and did like an art show, They had done one where there were like 2 or 3 artists before, probably like a few months before in the pandemic.
Yeah.
But it was, like a smaller scale thing. And so I was like, yeah, that would be really awesome. I'd love to do that, because like my name is mostly attached to like, property photography and architectural photography, which I love. But I grew up doing art, so I really want to kind of like move towards that direction more again, you know? Like kind of feel like I'm in high school again. Maybe that's part of it. I don't know, like, you know, where people thought I was an artist. But anyway, so I was like, yeah, that'd be great. And so like about 2 weeks later, I'm in there again and we're talking. I'd been talking with a painter that you may know, Jen Griffith. She does these like beautiful acrylics and like really cool seasonal things. And then she paints these custom surfboards that are amazing. Yeah. And so I was like, yeah, it'd be really cool to maybe like get her, maybe like another artist. So like 2 or 3 artists in here. So I mentioned that to Sarah Gell, and Sarah Gell was like, yeah, that would be really cool. But if you really want to know what I'd love to do is I'd really love to make kind of like a mini Spoleto. I was like, oh, okay. Yeah, let's go. Let's do this. So I immediately recruited Kate Ritchie who has a studio over at Redux. She was at the show and asked for her help. And then Julie Glass, who is a member of the Charleston Artists Guild, her and her husband, Scott, basically their whole family are like regulars over at Tradesman. And so they have really tight connections with them. And she heard about it through Sarah Gell, asked if she could help. So we had all this meeting, kind of the minds. And really, honestly, they were like my right hands. And we just went with it and were like, what can we do with this? You know, where do we need to cap the number of artists? At first, actually, we didn't even think we needed to cap the number of artists. But there became so much interest so quickly. Right. I mean, we only did this in like a month and a half. Then you know, we were like, whoa, well, I need to go measure out. So Sarah Gell and I are like walking around, like literally measuring out with tape measure. How many artists can we fit in this space and still remain socially distant, right? Because of the times, and make everybody feel safe. And then we decided to add music. But we, of course, wanted the artist to be like the main thing, right? Because, you know, I mean, all the good art festivals got canceled this year. Yeah. You know, and all the markets are like more like craft markets, you know. Right. So when you think holiday market, right, which there's a lot of them going on right now. Sure. You do think like, oh, this is going to be like candles and whatever. It's just not to disparage that stuff, but it's very, you know, it's Cracker Barrel out in the parking lot. Yeah, cheese straws and that's not. But this was like a true, you know, art show. Yeah, and it was so much fun. It felt, first of all, you guys got you lucked out with the greatest weather in December in the history of December anywhere. It was like actually 72 degrees and like sunny and just beautiful out. And it was like a California day. Yeah, dude, it was amazing. We were so scared too, because like the few days before the chance of rain kept going up. No. And then like the day before, right before, it dropped drastically. And we're like, oh, thank God. Like maybe we'll make it. Yeah. And I mean, and you had just an amazing turnout of people. When I pulled up, because I was like, all right, what time should I go? I talked to some friends and I'm like, all right, we'll go around 2:30. So I pull up and I'm like people are parked all the way down like King Street. Yeah. And I'm like, oh, I underestimated what this was. Yeah, I think we all were surprised too, honestly. Yeah, people were hungry for it. Yeah, I mean, I think that was a big part of it, right? I mean, we've all been locked in. Artists were hungry for it. You know, artists were hungry to be able to connect face to face, which was the whole point of the thing, right? Is to like put people who appreciate art, and people who do art in the same place safely, where they can face to face have a connection. And you know, because the online thing is great, you know, it is, of course, it's a great tool, but at the same time, you got to see art in person. I mean, there were artists that I'm not familiar with where you walk past their booth and you just stop dead in your tracks and you're like, who are you and what the hell have you done? You know, like there was a couple like that where I did that and I was just like, oh my, like, where have you been? How have I missed this? It's because there hasn't been, you know, a festival like that, well, at all this year, really. There's and when there's an art show, it's usually for 1 or 2, like a small group of people at most. Sure. But to have something like this, we haven't had that since maybe Culture Clash or something similar. Yeah. Back in the day. Right.
So yeah, this is not the first time I've heard Sarah's name enhancing the arts community, because I had Crystal Wellman, who's a professional dancer,
amazing, talented girl.
Yeah,
holy
and
crap.
she did she choreographed a performance that was at Tradesman as well.
That was a big talk actually, in us organizing this,
trying to get them in there. It's
was kind of like, let's look at some of the logistics of how they did it. Really, to be honest, sorry, Crystal. I still love you, but hold on. We actually.
Let me open up. Hold on. Let me get ready for this.
Well, so there were ideas floating around, about putting on like a lot of like really awesome music, which is great and stuff, and like dancers and maybe some other performances. There was talked about so actually originally there was a Christmas performance that happened the 2 days prior to our festival that also was awesome. But I cannot think of Keely's last name right now. Sorry, Keely. But it was
Enright?
I know she was the one who orchestrated that one. But basically, it was like a Christmas thing, and they basically like got on stage and covered a bunch of Christmas songs. These really cool stuff. I caught the tail end of one of them. But what we were trying to do is we were trying to set this one apart, right? I didn't want it to be like completely Christmas themed, and I also didn't want to take as much, and because you understand that Crystal is a powerhouse of dancer, and I just think she would captivate everyone way too much, that and like her people would, that the visual artist wouldn't get enough attention. And that was kind of like my issue with that. So like I thought about it for a second, but I think overall I wanted to keep kind of the main thing, and that being the visual arts, which is why, we did add some music and stuff, but we kind of like made it a smaller thing, and the musicians were amazing.
Yeah, you had Kelly there from
Kelly.
Oh my gosh,
I love him, man. He's such a great dude. I was so stoked when he was excited about coming out and doing that.
I mean, I might disagree with you. I agree with you that she would take the attention during the performance, but the performance isn't that long, and
that's fair.
The worst case scenario is that people would come out specifically to see her, and possibly no. The worst case scenario is they come to see her, and possibly walking through the artists would do like I do, just stop in their tracks and be like, whoa, that's so cool. And you had such a range of artists. You had people selling very affordable art and people selling high-end, thousands of dollar pieces.
Yeah.
And that's fantastic. I loved that you had this diverse range of not only where people are in their careers, but also just different types of art, different people, just, you know what I'm saying? You had the guy with the wood prints, the timber.
Yeah.
And then you had Vic, who does these watercolor like space world
comic
things.
Looking. Yeah.
Yes, it's just awesome. You couldn't have more different types of artists.
Yeah.
Like right across from each other. It's fantastic.
I appreciate it, man. That was intentional. We wanted to do that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was really excited about the fact that there were that big of a variety of people that were excited about it, you know?
I thought that was cool. All right. So, little confession. When I first met you through a group of friends that we have in Charleston that we have in common, I had no idea that you were a photographer. No idea.
That's okay.
I didn't know what you did.
Yeah.
I was just like, oh, here's chat. And then one day, you started asking me about some of the real estate stuff. You were like telling me, oh, the people I was working for that are no longer doing this, and I have to do things on my own, and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, wait, you're a photographer?
I know exactly what point you're talking about.
It was not that long ago either. But I was just like, holy cow, like, why did I not know this? How did that, you were not walking around flaunting your skills.
A lot of people, it's funny because this comes up a lot with me in music, because a lot of people don't have no clue in Charleston, have no clue that I'm a musician as well.
Yeah. And I would have suspected that first.
Fair enough. Rock and roll, baby.
There you go.
No, yeah. I guess it was kind of a weird thing because like I grew up doing art and music, and I was mostly into like drawing and painting. I like dabbled in things, but I was mostly into drawing and painting. And then 2012 rolls around and I had never, other than like playing with film cameras when I was a kid, you know, my dad like had an SLR, he had an old Minolta, and we had, you know, disposable cameras and Polaroids and whatever. But yeah, I'd never actually really touched a camera other than that. Well, 2012 rolls around. I'm like deep in corporate America. Like you know, I graduated from college. I'm like,
what'd you go to college for?
Oh God, everything. I changed my major so many times, man. I was an engineering major, a mechanical engineering major for a while. I was a psychology major and a sociology minor. I wound up graduating with a marketing degree and sociology minor.
That's actually probably a very good thing considering.
Honestly,
Marketing degree is an amazing thing to have going into a visual, artistic.
I didn't know that at the time.
Right.
I'm glad now.
All right. So you got out of college. So, you went into the workforce, I take it?
Yeah, actually. Well, that's how I paid, dude. So I came up like my parents are fine now. They're great, but they grew up really poor. So I had to pay for college myself. So I got into the corporate workforce actually because of college, just to pay for college, because I went to Clemson and that's not cheap.
No.
So I started working for AT&T. It was Singular back then. Actually, it was like right before they switched all the branding, right around the merger. And so I worked with them for 5.5 years. I mean, like through college and after college, went to Atlanta with them, came back to South Carolina. At the time I came back from South Carolina, I was like working for Apple corporate at the time. And there were all these like really cool things, but it wasn't me. And so there was this job opening that I saw happen on Facebook. It was just a friend who posted on Facebook, the studio she worked at. She was like, oh, we need another photographer. So me with like no experience at all. Walk in.
Got an iPhone.
Right. Yeah. I'm like, hey, so about that job, you know? But basically they needed someone. They like saw my resume. They're like, well, obviously you have no experience, which I was upfront about, but they were like, well, if you can teach our staff here needs help on learning how to sell things. And I was a sales consultant and in marketing and stuff like that for so many years through telecom and IT industry, all that. And I was like, okay, cool. Yeah, let's do that. I can teach you guys that if you can teach me how to use a camera. And so it started out and, you know, it wasn't very good pay, but I learned a skill, you know, and made friends with all the photographers. It was like 5 photographers that were all women and then me. And we just all got really close. It was like, I was like the token, like dude friend, you know? But we all got really close, like a little family, and they just taught me so much even outside of the studio and with cameras and stuff. And so fast forward, I kind of put it down, didn't own my own equipment because the studio owned all of it. And fast forward, so 2016 or whatever, I've been living in Charleston for about 3.5 years at this point. And I decided like, all right, I'm going to just travel the US for a while. And I had bought a camera about a year before and it just sat in my closet.
Right.
And so
a lot of those, that's, I mean, when people are starting out, I try to tell them, dude, look on eBay or now Facebook Marketplace. I'm like, so many people will buy a camera and never use it. And then they just sell it for pennies on the dollar.
Yeah.
And to start out like that, you know, Nikon D3000 from a few years ago is amazing.
Oh yeah.
Get it.
Canon T3, not even the T3i. That was me.
Yeah. There you go.
For sure. First one I ever had. Yeah.
Was it like 6 megapixels?
Right. Yeah. Right, yeah. Probably something like 12, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, I'm traveling across the US at this point and I'm like, basically it's like me and a Mazda 3. I took the back seat out. So I had a little extra room, put a bunch of camping gear back there, snacks, all that stuff, and a couple of guitars. And I'm just like driving and I'm literally like hiking, camping, shooting, like all day, every day, basically. And
little did you know at the time, by the way, if you'd been filming all that, you'd be like one of these YouTube guys.
I know, dude. Oh my gosh. Next time, maybe. Yeah. Maybe there's a next time, right?
I watched some of those. They're amazing. But anyway, go ahead.
Awesome. Yeah, I know. Like people were making their whole living doing this now, just traveling that way.
They just go on trips. They film the whole trip. There was one guy I was watching. He wasn't even, I mean, it doesn't feel like his YouTube channel is about the photography as much it is about the hiking.
Right.
And he just solo hikes through these amazing locations, but he films everything perfectly. And and it's like, who would have thought that you would spend 40 minutes watching a dude hike by himself through the mountains and call that entertainment?
Oh yeah.
And now that's, you know, there's a market for it.
I've got one for you. Actually, I just left my apartment where my roommate and her boyfriend were watching some dude literally just travel around Korea and eating like dumplings and stuff.
Yeah.
Like it's the same thing.
Travel vlogging is a thing.
Huge. Yeah.
Yeah. But I wonder for some of those people how hard it is to make a living right now.
Well, true. That's fair.
But anyway, sorry.
Anyway,
so you're on you're on this epic trip, the go find yourself around America in a tent.
Basically, yeah. So I, do the whole thing coast to coast, do the same thing in Thailand, come back, and here I am with like this stockpile of pictures. But also a lot of practice, right? Mm-hmm. And that's kind of the point of that portion of the story, is that I just spent time, because I had so much time, just practicing with my camera and kind of seeing what to do and what not to do, And basically that's kind of where it started growing. And I kind of thought like, oh, this might be something I really would want to do, But there was a lot of stuff that happened in between that. I mean, I came back here to Charleston for like 6 months. Went back into a job at Westbrook because they're also, like family. And Edward Westbrook, the owner, told me, if you ever come back to Charleston, let me know. And, you've got a job. And so I did. And in the midst of all that, though, too, I had made this connection with a now friend through an old roommate who owned this company out of Philly that basically was like, gave as like a digital nomad retreat company. So like digital nomads would basically just pay her to set up like these trips that had like, just workspace and a community and a bunch of fun adventure things to do, all kind of involved in that, all for one price. And so she asked me if I wanted to lead some trips. And so I was like, yeah, sure. So before I even came back to Charleston, I had committed to move to Bali with her to do that. And so I did that.
By the way, this is such that sounds like one of the type of career, like digital boom career type of things. Yeah. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, totally wait, what?
Right. Who would think you could ever like get paid or like live for free or something doing that kind of stuff, right? Just
leading kind of like tours. So it's for people who would just want to work.
So it's like, so basically like remote workers who travel around. They're nomadic, right?
They're not stuck. They're like a web designer who's not stuck behind in a cubicle.
Yeah.
They can just go wherever they want to do it, or whatever. Stock trader, something. Not stock trader. They need a good connection, but
absolutely, yeah. And we had a lot of people like that, but we also had people who were like, famous. Like some of I've made friends off these people or from these people off this trip. That now like there's a buddy of mine. He's this like YouTube celebrity dating coach. Yeah, influencer. Yeah. And another girl who's like used to do, like J. Cole's social media accounts, and like another guy who like became famous and rich at like, famous like in the internet world and rich off social media at like 15 or 16 years old. It's like these crazy things. But then also you had like somebody who was like a back-end developer or whatever, right? Right? Like it's kind of cool. And it's like basically I'm like the dad of the trip. I'm like, let me answer any of your questions. Your SIM card has an issue. Cool. Like, all right, there's a bird in your room and you need it out or whatever. But then also I'm like, well, we're gonna go. I'll teach you how to surf for the next 3 hours in Canggu, or we're gonna go like hike this Mount Batur, which is a volcano, and watch the sunrise off of it, or these 6 volcanoes we're going to hit tomorrow or whatever. Sign up and I'll be the guy who guides you there. So it was this really cool opportunity. But again, all that is just...
And you're getting paid for this.
Well, I didn't get paid. I was doing my own kind of thing. I was trying to focus on the photography, but I was getting paid in the sense that all my expenses were paid. Yeah.
Right.
So like my trip was free. I had this beautiful villa that was free. All my food was paid for, all the adventure, like everything that I got to do. Yeah. So it was just
your cost of living was covered, but you didn't walk out of there with a bag of money.
Exactly. Yeah. So, I mean, it worked for me at the time.
Heck, well, that's this. When I said early on, I'm like, you're living a lot of people's dreams with all of the stuff that you've done with your life so far.
Yeah. Oh man.
Because me as a guy who's been married 20 years with kids that are, you know what I'm saying? Like,
you might be living some people's dreams too. Cause like I want a family,
that was my dream back then.
Right.
And it still is, not saying it, but when you look at like, oh, you get to do all that. That's just awesome. Like you're doing it the best time of your life. You know what I'm saying? Like,
I can't say it's been bad. It's been good.
I'm not saying it like in a way of like downplaying the things like someone like me has done.
Of course.
But I'm saying it just like, man, you're taking advantage of your situation to the fullest.
You got to,
and it's
man.
awesome.
I appreciate it. I mean, like if you're not doing that, right? Like what are you doing? You know, like there's living and there's existing, right? So let's live, you know, whether it be like doing that or doing just something else you're passionate about, you know?
So this is 2016. This is all going on.
2006. This is pretty much ranging between like 2016 and early 2018.
And I had known you around this time, but yeah, you would like come and go away for a while.
Yeah.
And we wouldn't see you, and then you'd come back, and it would just be like everyone was happy to see you. And it was,
I always missed you guys, you know.
I was
like,
well, where's this guy going? You know, those situations where there's like 30 people hanging out and a lot of acquaintances.
Absolutely.
And so you're like, I don't even know anything about half the people that we're hanging out with half the time.
You and me both, man.
Yeah,
yeah, for sure. Yeah, so. I mean, that was, but man, what a good group of people though. What a solid group of people.
Oh yeah.
And you just learn so much from people. That's great. But yeah, so anyway, I come back here. And so my point being is that I was kind of in the background. The photography was kind of in the background, you know? And now I get back and so sorry, this is like a long story, but
it's a podcast.
This is pretty much how I do. Yeah, exactly. It's pretty much how I talk all the time. So I get back to the States. I moved to Charlotte. I started dating a girl before I left. And she lived in Charlotte. So I moved back to Charlotte. We break up. I come back down here. Like I said, that's where we stepped into the tradesman thing I was talking about earlier. Stepped into a job there. And while I was there was this architectural photographer. And his name's Tripp. And he's like a Charleston dude. Been doing Charleston. I mean, I've been doing architectural photography for a while. He has his own business doing it for himself and really great work. And he got hired to take photos of tradesmen because of the architect that had done the redesign for that place. And we're talking about gear, whatever. A couple months later, he shows up and he's like, "Hey, man, I'm glad that you're here. I was thinking about you the other day, and you know, I got this email from this dude in Paris, this agency in Paris, and they need some photographers. I'm thinking about doing it, but you know, I'm really busy, but it might be a good way to fill space, but I think it'd be a good opportunity for you." I'm like, "Okay, cool, man." And I've never done architectural photography at all at this point. This is only like, you know, 2.5 years ago. And I'm like, "Okay, cool, man." So he's like, "All right, well, yeah, so do you want his information, hiring, manager's information?" "Yeah, okay, man, that sounds great." So the guy basically is like, you know, we speak, "Yeah, you know, go shoot your house or your friend's house or whatever. Send me the photos. This is kind of the lookbook. This is what we're looking for. This is a style." So I send him the stuff. He gets the photos. A few days later, it was like, it was literally Thanksgiving Day, 2018. So like 2 years ago. He sends me my contract. So I'm like, "Okay, cool. I can do this."
Got a job.
Well, I got a job doing photography. This is cool. So yeah, I signed on for it. What I found out was that the client, which is like still the largest client I ever had now at this point, was the company Airbnb.
Yeah.
And so they send a lot of work and they pay well because they've got the money for it, or they did. Hopefully they still do. Sorry guys, this year's been a little rough on you, but yeah, so anyway, I start doing it, and as I'm doing it more and more, I'm like, I can do this on my own because the contract's not exclusive. So I'm like, all right, I can do this on my own, do my own brand. That's probably about the time that you're talking about where I hit you up.
Yeah,
I was like, "Hey, man."
There's a huge difference between architectural photography and real estate photography, and then what you were doing, where they have a very specific look that they're going for. Because what you find with real estate photography, it's a chore. It's not a creative endeavor.
No, it can't.
It's I've had, because I do a bunch of it too.
Right.
And I've had real estate agents that say, I don't want artsy photos. I just want to see the room.
Right.
And
as
blah,
big
blah,
as
blah.
you possibly can make it.
I've had other ones go, can you make it look like this? And they'll show me the world's worst HDR photo where it looks like a digital painting at that point. And I'm like, and I'll just be like, no. No. I mean, yes, I can do that, but no, that's just gross. Like, why would you even put that out there to represent something that doesn't even look like a real house?
Oh yeah.
But that's the kind of, you're dealing with people coming into a room after you shoot it and moving things around.
Mm-hmm.
And saying, "Can you reshoot this?" And you're like,
If I had $1 for
I'm
every
making,
time.
yeah, I'm making a very slim amount of money for my time here.
Right.
And any minute wasted is at that point me losing money. So,
Right.
so the answer is, yeah, I'll redo it, but I hate you.
It's tough, man. It's so like the issue is like different clients want different things. And
Right.
I guess if you start to develop your own style and they see that, then that's great. Cause then when a client trusts you, it's amazing. Cause then they're just like, you know what to do, man, go for it. And I'm like, yes, I love you guys. And I have no qualms with like certain clients' specific things, especially if they send me a lot of business, right? Like, I mean, of course, let me, I want to please the client, but I also do want to do it in my own style. But what you're talking about is right, especially when you're doing a lot of like, dealing with a lot of, and you do find a lot in real estate. It seems like the real estate agents, like you have all these different agents who have kind of like different styles themselves too.
Exactly.
And you're like, oh man. But then you have like sometimes the owners of the houses too, and they'll be around, right? And you know what I'm talking about, where it's like,
they'll follow you around.
Yeah, exactly. And you're like, oh man. Yeah, because they forget too. I think a lot of people don't realize that a lot of the work that goes into the photography goes in on the back end. Yeah. So they're like, well, you're only here for like an hour. And you're like, well, yeah, but you don't know about the hours of editing, right?
Yeah.
Like,
well, the sad part is there's definitely garbage in, garbage out. Like if your house looks like garbage or whatever you're shooting, it doesn't matter. It can be anything.
Yeah.
It's hard to make something that looks terrible look good.
Yeah.
You can make something that looks okay look great.
Yeah.
But something that looks terrible,
yeah.
Now you're in trouble because it's just like, okay, there's only so much I can do at a point where it's, I don't have 10 hours to put into your shoot to take out like the 18 cats that keep jumping on everything while I'm shooting. Sorry.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just
leave them in, I've seen some agents where, and I don't know who this photographer is, so I may be calling somebody out, but there's like, I think they're Photoshopped too. I don't even know that they're real. It looks like sometimes some of them are like Photoshopped because of some of the same dogs, I think, in different properties. But for real, like listings of agents, maybe you've seen these too, where they're in Charleston area where there are dogs on the couches and stuff. Have you seen any of those?
No.
It's really interesting. I've only seen them a few times, but it seemed like it was in a short amount of time, so maybe it just quickly fell apart. But
I don't know. I've had animals that are in pictures that I didn't even know were there.
Okay.
Someone would be like, "Can you get rid of this dog that's under the table?" And I'm like, "There's a dog under the table?" And then you'll see like a pair of eyes, and you're like, "Oh, I'm sorry." Or the dog's in the backyard, and you could see it through the window, and I'm like, "Well, who cares?"
Yeah.
Why did that? But anyway, that's the thing. The issue with the different types of photography that you do professionally, like that pay the bills, like it's the real estate photography is very different than architectural photography.
For sure.
So when you see the wonderful world of architectural photography and then you step into the world of real estate photography, you feel like you're taking a huge leap backwards.
Yeah.
But the difference is, you could make a living shooting 5 houses a day doing real estate photography because there's just there's a market for it.
And a market, yeah.
But there's only so many houses that an architect builds.
Sure. Yeah, for sure.
Or
and
buildings.
Oh, totally. Even like with some of the projects that I've worked on, the difference between like and I totally get it, totally understand. But like I'll hand it to a client and I know this is a client of mine. This is somebody that regularly comes to me. I know what their style is. I know that they like my style in this realm, like, right, for like, say like a vacation rental or something. And so like they like the lighting a certain way. And I know, that they like certain things exposed a certain way. And like, the shadows, I know where the ticks are for the shadows, the highlights, the whites, the blacks, right? Like to get it to where they want to see it. And then you have like the architect who built that like property or something, right? And like you said, it doesn't happen very often, but every once in a while, then you have like the architect and you have the construction company and you have the interior designer and you have all these people, and the interior designer may want it totally different than the vacation or than the like property management.
Yeah.
company.
They want to see the design of the house. They want to see they're concerned with, lighting fixtures and, couch placement and rugs and whatever. whatever, where the architect is concerned by like the flow of light, of natural light coming in, and like the design of the structure, and the builder is more concerned like, look at the quality of this,
right? Yeah, totally.
Show where the seams are on this flooring and blah blah blah, and so they all are looking at very different things.
Well, even in different things in that case, but also in even the editing style. Like the architect's like, he wants to see all of the shadow and all of the highlight, the way the light flows through the space.
They want it naturally lit.
Right. Yeah. It's a totally different thing. And it's so funny because it might even be the same exact shot that might encompass all of those things. It might make everyone happy, but the edit is like so completely different, right? You're like, the lighting, one, you want it more flat because you want it bright, and then the other one, you're like, they're like, well, I can't see the way the light flows through that window that sits up in the, at the top of the stairs down the staircase into the kitchen to, you know what I mean? Like, that's what they want to see.
So let me ask you a question. When you were doing your walkabout, mm-hmm. when you're camping along, taking this trip, what was your, in regards to your creativity and what you were trying to learn, what were you thinking back then? Like what was the landscape to you as far as a career possibly in photography? What were you thinking? Like, were you thinking,
wow, yeah.
Like, did you have a goal when you were doing that, or were you just kind of taking the
I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. I kind of like, I think maybe, but kind of like also not really that much. I had a very fluid goal maybe, and it changed, with time, definitely a decent amount. But I mean, overall, I thought, so originally I wanted to work for myself. I knew that. Right. That was a solid, right? That was like a given. Originally, when I was living in Atlanta, a buddy of mine and I, we actually started a company. It was like an apparel company. And it was really because we wanted to work for ourselves. And, and it was cool. It was fun. I loved it, but it wasn't my passion,
Yeah.
And so
you can't be successful if you don't love when you're working for yourself. 100%. You have to love it.
Oh yeah, man. There's so much work that goes into working for yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you have to really love what you're doing.
It has to not feel like work.
Exactly.
It has to feel like, no, my life depends on this and I have to do this.
Totally. Yeah. And so that was just it, is that like, I guess that would be my other thing that I was looking for, is I was looking for what the passion was. But while traveling, like that became really a big passion of mine, is the outdoor landscapes, right? Just the hike, the beauty of like sprawling landscapes and the adventure, the feeling of adventure, and like, just being able to capture that. Like, cause when I painted and stuff back in the day, like, and which I still do every once in a while, but not really, like that was something I loved to do, painting. But with photography, I was just like, I was kind of always jealous of photographers a little bit, because I spent like months and sometimes years on a painting, like depending on, what it was. And then, they just like captured it in an instant, which there was like developing and editing, all those things.
You didn't know that they
right, that I was one of those guys.
They woke up at like 4:30 in the morning in the middle of the freezing cold on an October night, and, all that stuff.
Yeah, I've been guilty of it too.
You're like, they hit click, and here I am with, trying to mix colors and
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So I was guilty of that mindset once upon a time too. For sure.
Yeah. But, well, I think a lot of people are, when they don't understand how, when they don't understand photography as a creative tool, like, or creative, whatever you want to call it, art form.
Sure.
Because it really is, and I don't think you ever stop learning about it too.
No, God, no. Oh man, if you think you do, then I think there might be trouble.
Maybe you can understand this thing. This is kind of where I have been lately in my photography, is that, as a photographer, when you're shooting something and my favorite jobs are ones where you have a very specific goal. Like, I'm trying to capture X, whatever it is, that like, this is what our goal is. And you're doing that. And as a photographer, you want to get like the sharp, perfect, the people, if it's people or whatever the subject is, looks amazing. The light's perfect on them.
Right.
And you're conveying this perfect vision of what you sought out to do. Right. Mm-hmm. You've kind of almost envisioned it in your head before you even took the picture.
Oh, for sure.
And you've sculpted it, you've composed it as far as like light and composition.
Yeah.
But I have found that the shots that I thought were trash, the throwaway shots in between when people were caught off guard and it wasn't as planned or set up, are the ones that people are drawn to.
Yeah.
Especially like clients, like the out of focus weird shot that like I would have thrown away.
Right.
They like for reasons. And then you start exploring, well, why do you like this shot? Right. And they're like, well, because that looks like how I felt.
Right.
You know, like you captured
natural.
this thing instead of capturing, you know what I'm saying? Like it was more of a collaboration of me trying to get to somewhere and them trying to get them caught off guard, just being themselves. And then when they see that, it kind of draws them in.
Yeah.
And trying to, now I'm looking at every shoot going like, all right, where's the in between? Where's that kind of space where you're capturing the soul of the subject?
Sure.
For me, I like to shoot people.
Right.
But where's that point where you capture the thing unexpected?
Yeah, like kind of candid, natural feeling.
It's kind of like, to put it in less heady terms, but it's kind of like the journey is better than the destination kind of concept.
That's sort of, yeah, that's true.
You know, you get the perfect shot, but the shot that maybe means more is the one right before the perfect shot.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I get that. That makes sense to me. I mean, I mean, for me, because most of my subjects aren't people most of the time.
Landscapes and houses and
Right. So it is, which I am trying to change that because I did love portraiture. I just like it a lot more in a more natural sense. Like I want to put people and the human element more into like landscapes and architecture and stuff. But like, yeah, I mean, like whenever you find somebody who can like plan a shot and make it feel so natural, it's so awesome. Like I love that because
like a Tyler Shields where he'll because he does everything film.
Yeah.
So that guy will plan like a huge thing to make one frame.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is insane. Which is another thing people don't realize that happens a lot is that like if your shots get planned really in depth.
Some of the best shots that look like they're kind of off the cuff were actually planned.
For sure. Absolutely. I mean, God, look at Instagram right now. Like just scroll through Instagram, you know, but for me, like, there are shots that I planned or something like, so like being out and traveling somewhere or something. And like in my mind, if it's a place I haven't been, it's something I'm like looking at, you know, I'm looking at pictures of if there are pictures out there that people have been there that are like readily available on Instagram or somewhere where I can find them, then great. Cause I mean, I go to places that are that way, you know, but I also go to places where I tried to like, where a lot of people don't take those like Insta famous kind of photos, you know, if you've seen that same shot, like if you've seen like horseshoe, but like for instance, at the show this past weekend, I don't know if you noticed, but there's one of the big 24x36s I usually hangs above my bed. It was Horseshoe Bend.
And it's been shot
a million times, but so like the way I did it is I split it in half. Well, kind of split it like took like a third of it basically. And I kind of changed the focal point in the composition because everybody's seen that stupid photo. Like it's great. And I took that same photo too, but that's not the one that I like, you know, hung out, you know, above my bed on my personal wall or like showed an art show or have like ever, you know, posted because it's just everybody's ever done it. But, you know, you can plan shots like that and it's great. But I think also getting there and like seeing your surroundings and being able to kind of off the cuff figure something out really quickly that might not be perfectly planned and just watching the light and seeing where that falls and trying to pay attention to composition and then capture something that you didn't expect to capture at the moment too. Sometimes those are some of my best shots. Those are my favorite shots personally. Anyway.
Right. Something that captures the feeling of that you were experiencing while you were there.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like, and something else a guy told me one time that I met, he's a good friend now. He lives in Montana. I met him in Big Bend National Park on this trip actually. And he's like this awesome dude. He's a geologist who's like retired. He's been to Big Bend more times than I can imagine. Like he's been going since college and he's in his 50s. And he was like, hey man, and we're on this like long 8-hour hike the day after we met each other, which was epic. And he's like, hey man, don't forget, look behind you when you're on a hike. And I was just like, oh. And that kind of it was so simple, but it blew my mind because I was like, I've never thought to really look behind me and to like focus on that. But some of my best photos came out of that.
Yeah.
On that hike, you know?
When you're at the beach and there's a sunset and everyone's pointing their phone at the sunset and you're with like the colors behind you.
Exactly. I tell people that all the time.
All the cool colors are right behind you. Like,
dude.
shoot the. But that's the kind of thing. Yeah. Changing your perspective. Like you're so drawn to certain, we're all drawn to certain things.
For sure.
And like just getting down low and seeing it from a child's perspective and everything looks bigger. Yeah. Or getting up high, like with a drone and everything looks totally different. And that bird's eye view of thing, like drone photography to me is so fun because you get to see the world in like it gets something like that. The place where you live, where you get used to. Right. Everybody lives someplace that has interesting photos.
For sure.
I don't care where you live. Mm-hmm. You can live in the middle of the flattest cornfield place, and there's people living in like Manhattan that wish they could take photos where you live.
Yeah, absolutely.
And vice versa.
For sure.
But when you change the perspective, like you said, turn around or just find a different way to look, so you can just walk out your own back door in your backyard. Every day, I stare as the leaves are turning in my backyard. I look out my windows and I don't take the picture because I'm like, I'm just going to enjoy it. But I'll look at the different as the leaves are changing. It's just silly things like that of trying to find the beauty in the normal.
Yeah. Yeah. You know? I think we get like desensitized to it almost.
Yeah, definitely.
You know, and it sucks because it's like, wow, because I've left Charleston so many times and then come right back, right? Like, months or almost a year later. And it's like, and then I kind of start seeing it with fresh eyes again. And I'm like, I got to remember to do that while I'm here though too. You know, every once in a while, like I'll be driving over the bridge and I got to remember how amazing a piece of architecture this thing is, you know, the Ravenel Bridge or just like looking off over the side of the bridge or whatever. But I think that's probably why drones, excuse the pun, took off so easy. But you know,
especially while you can before the FAA completely makes it impossible to do anything with them.
I know, dude, they're cracking down. But yeah, dude, like it's just the fact that you do switch perspective other than the obvious cool factor, right?
Oh yeah.
It feels great to drive.
You feel like a kid.
Yeah.
It's like an RC car, but in the sky. Like, are you kidding me? You're flying.
Exactly. But you're seeing things like I'm looking around, you know, here in your office and I'm like seeing these beautiful aerial shots. And I'm just like, oh my gosh. Yeah, man. Like the fact that you're seeing, like, I'm looking at this, I'm like, I'm not sure exactly 100%. Honestly, if I have seen these things before, they look like they're probably, these two shots look like they're probably in Charleston. I'm sure I probably have seen these places, but I might not have seen them from that perspective. And that's amazing.
Yeah. I mean, it's describing two shots I have just hanging in my studio. One is just marshland. That's all in James Island.
Yeah.
It's just go straight down on marshland. Yeah. It's just going into the marshland, pointing the camera straight down. Yeah. And that's what it looked like. You know, just the different textures and colors of like these tiny little, you know, seagrass and water where it meets and divides. And then there's another picture of just a shoreline at Edisto. There's a couple of like surfers right there by this pipeline that I thought was a cool subject to kind of, because I've seen that picture. I've taken that picture so many times of beach shorelines.
Right.
Because it is so cool because you get the patterns of the water. Dude, there's all these different colors. It's, you know, it's a cool shot. But then I was like, oh, there's this pipeline and there's two surfers. That's the shot, you know, and then you find a subject in it. But I'm sorry, I'm describing these things that are on a podcast that I have to reshare them. They're in my Instagram somewhere, I'm sure.
Yeah, link them in there because people definitely need to see these. Are beautiful shots.
But that's the kind of thing I'm talking about. Like you could your perspective, and it doesn't have to be aerial. It could just be anything. And just looking, you know, I think a lot of people during this lockdown were getting into macro photography.
For sure.
Because they were stuck inside
at home.
So they're like, okay, let me, and macro photography or just small kind of photography was how I used to experiment with lighting.
Yeah.
Like I'd take Legos and take pictures of them in weird things just so, because I could, and didn't have to have an expensive flash or something.
That's an awesome way to do it. Actually, there's some artists out there that I've seen. Their names are blanking right now. Maybe someone that I've followed on Instagram for a while that did a lot of like cool adventure photography, right? They traveled and they did like these awesome shoots in these like really beautiful remote places. And that's what they did when it locked down. Yeah. They started taking these little train figurines that they bought and then like making, like a hot spring out of like a grapefruit and like some jello and like, tin foil, they slot cannons with brown paper bags and things like that. So it looked like little figures and stuff. Man, like it's been a thing for the pandemic for sure.
Let me ask you a question. Cool. When you're driving around and you see like on Dorchester Road right now, I'm getting very specific, sorry. There's like a construction site and there's like a 25, 30 foot pile of dirt. And I go by there and I'm like, who do I get to put in that dirt and make it look like we're in the middle of the desert?
Exactly.
Like stuff like that is what goes through my head when I'm driving around.
I'm not gonna disclose the place, but there is a spot actually that I found a few months ago that I'm really excited to. But the funny thing is this, because I don't work with models very often, it's like that's a whole other subset of the community.
Yeah.
So if anybody wants to model for me, I really want to practice with people again. So just let me know. But I have this spot that I've been holding on to for months that looks like a desert. And I'm like, oh man, it's a construction site. Yeah. And I'm like, oh man, I want to take some people there and just shoot them like we're like in a desert, because I love the desert. I fell in love with the desert. And there's another spot whenever I was, so for like 6 months, I was living up here in Somerville, like just down the street, like I was saying before. And just during the pandemic, and there's a mine there's like some kind of mine or something. It's near where like you would put in at the Edisto to like float. I guess it's not the Edisto. Sorry, that's the Cooper, isn't it? Where you float. And like, yeah, it's kind of like near a boat launch. And anyway, the point is that the first thing I thought when I saw this mine and this massive, like you said, there's like mounds of like sand and rock and stuff. I was like, who could I take over there? Right. Like, it's exactly. Yeah. Totally feel that for sure.
Yeah. But that's what I'm talking about when you're looking for inspiration as a photographer.
Yeah.
When you start seeing things and like those things that are out of place normally, like the pile of dirt or whatever it is.
Yeah.
You start looking around and seeing those things and going like, how can I use that?
Yep.
How can I?
Exactly.
Yeah.
The simplest things.
All right. So these days, now that you're back here, you've been doing a lot more of what I would consider paid work. Photographically. What's your why?
Why?
When you're waking up to every day, when you're like, what are you aiming to do? What's your trajectory for like the short-term trajectory? Like,
yeah,
not your 5-year plan here, but like kind of like right now, what are you trying to achieve?
Yeah, that's a great question. Man, well,
and it doesn't even have to be photography related. You could be like, I'm looking for love in all the wrong places, whatever it is.
That's probably pretty accurate, actually. Some of that. Other than that, though, I guess short term and long term, I'm actually looking to buy a house. So it's really nice to be able to make some money doing photography and something I love.
And you get to see all the different communities.
Dude, oh my gosh. Yes. Being able to see all the communities and also see these really talented interior designers, their take on a space. I'm like just collecting right now. I'm just like, yo, whenever I get a house, like I've got ideas now,
Yeah.
But also, man, like, I guess it was like I was talking about it. I kind of want to get more. I don't want to stop doing all the, I don't want to stop shooting for the clients that I'm shooting for now and doing like the stuff that I'm doing now because I love it. It's really awesome being able to see these spaces and these different designs and it's really like I feel like I owe a lot to it. And I love the people that I work with, but I do want to start doing more of like, kind of the stuff that the other stuff that I really love doing, like
the personal work,
which is the personal projects, right? Yeah. So like. And I would like to monetize it. This is the issue that I feel like it sucks. Cause like, when I was like young, and I know you'll get this cause I know you have like that like inner punk in you, but like back in high school and stuff, like I would be like, oh, well that's selling out, like,
well, yeah,
that was the thing.
Because you had this weird freedom of being young. You're like, money.
Yeah, he's like, who cares?
No, right.
Yeah. It's like I was like working in a record store too, like, making minimum wage at 16. Like, who cares? They'll sell outs, whatever. but now I realize that, I want to monitor, like going through wanting to have the freedom to express myself through my art and take pictures that I want to take and that kind of thing. I think there's a level of that you do have to also look at it like a business. And maybe that's why we have like the idea of a starving artist, is because, man, there's some people who have these like beautiful brains, these beautiful minds, who just like make these amazing pieces of work and do these awesome projects and work on really cool things that they're super passionate about. But unfortunately, they either don't know or haven't aligned themselves with someone who knows how to make a business out of it.
Yeah.
Or
market it properly.
Right. And I'm like, oh man, like, I don't know, maybe that's something in the future for me to like try and help there. But like, because I want to see more of these people succeed, and which is part of the reason why this festival, right?
Well, I was just about to say, your first foray into like organizing something like that was, in my opinion, very successul.
Thank you.
It wasn't something where there was no cover charge to get in or anything. So I don't know.
We wanted you to spend it on the artists.
Yeah. So I do think though you've kind of got you're onto something there with what you're just saying right now.
Well,
I think you.
I
think on top of just being a creative guy and somebody who's still searching and still has that passion for it.
Right.
You have some talents that you can help other people. A guy I mentioned before, Vic.
Oh yeah.
A guy like that. I don't think he knows his worth as far as an artist is concerned, because nobody has kind of said, hey, put your stuff. This is how you should be pricing your stuff.
Yeah.
Like when he told me the prices of his stuff, I was kind of taken aback because it was so low.
Too low. Yeah.
I was like, Vic, I know you for years now.
Yeah.
You're really good at what you do.
Right.
You should be charging for it.
For sure. You have
But
to.
he doesn't know.
Right.
He doesn't have somebody behind him that says, hey, there's a weird thing. And this is true in photography. It's true in art. It's true in just about any creative endeavor.
Right.
If you underprice yourself, getting out of that hole is
so difficult.
It's almost impossible.
Oh yeah.
Because now you're going to have clients that are used to paying you X amount of dollars, and then when you try to charge them what you think, what you realize you're worth,
right,
they're all upset, And then, but even worse is, even if they're not upset, your perception that they're going to be upset is crippling.
Oh yeah, for sure. It's so scary. It's oh my gosh, riddled with anxiety when you're like getting ready to like change that price tag. Just notch it up even just a little bit. I lost a client like that. I mean, I'm not going to name who he is, but honestly, I'm kind of glad
he lost you
in the end. Right? Yeah. Right now, honestly, I mean, if I'm being honest, who's going to be the first client I fired? But the only client I was going to fire actually. But I mean, yeah, man. I mean, you definitely are going to lose some people if you do it that way, and you're going to be scared and anxious, and it's way easier to hit the higher price and to nudge it down until you find that good medium. Right. In a business sense. Because you're also setting, not only that, you have to think too, like, think of your perception on Walmart right now. Right. And think of your perception of like Apple, especially like, pre Steve Jobs passing away. I know a lot of people have a lot of issues with them now, but I mean, overall, the perception of Walmart to Apple, quality wise, there's a massive gap. Right. But Walmart does their business this way, and it's fine. They do in volume. Low price. Apple, I guess they do a pretty good volume now, but I mean, they've always dealt with high price. Their value is quality, right? And so it's just one of those things where, do you want to be the Apple or do you want to be the Walmart?
Right. Yeah.
Because your Walmart, dude, you're gonna be working your ass off, right?
Yeah. You'll always be selling.
Oh yeah.
But you'll be working on Christmas.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Oh man, it's rough, but yeah. So no, I mean, yeah, I think that's a good thing to pay attention to. Yeah. Maybe we'll call.
But that's I invited him on the podcast. He's
awesome.
welcome to come on whenever he wants. No, because I met him through doing figure drawing at Tualingua.
Oh, that's awesome.
And we were doing that, and he was such a character. Yeah. He was just he's full of life. He's an interesting guy, and I think a lot of the people in that group undervalued themselves
Yeah.
tremendously. And maybe there's a reason why. I don't know. Maybe they found each other for a reason, in that for that period of time, there's a bunch of artists that were hanging out in that place, and I was just like, man, these people are really good, and they don't know it.
Right?
Like I should start buying up their art now before they
before the prices jack up.
Yeah, before someone realizes it.
Right. Oh my gosh.
But that sounds so creepy. I'm gonna take advantage of you now before you're famous. In all honesty, I just feel like people need to. It's much easier to start too high in that, and then, like you said, come back down a little bit,
and then people feel like they're getting a deal.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Which is great.
Yeah.
It's a win-win.
Man, that's so cool, man. That's good. But I do think that I don't know anything about that world of being kind of like an art rep,
right,
of some sort.
Yeah.
But I know photographers have agents.
Yeah. Oh, totally.
And I always look at that. I'm like, that sounds so crazy. But then I think of all the things I hate about photography that having an agent would solve.
Right.
Like when someone asks you to price a job and you're like, God, you know how much work that is?
Yeah. Even just pricing it. You're like, well, I'm going to charge you for like $50 just for me to price it. And then
consultation
it took me all this time. Yeah, exactly. No, you don't do that, of course.
Deposit,
right. But yeah, it is, man. It's a difficult thing. I know, dude. I've heard of so many photographers who have just made so much better livings because of the fact that they've gotten an agent. Not only because because that person can focus on something that's kind of almost like heart-wrenching for the artist, right? And for the photographer, but also because they know what the photographer's worth from the outside point of view, right?
Yeah.
It's difficult sometimes to try and be humble also, right? And also try to be like self-worth and humility is such a funny thing, because in this time, like, we're talking about self-love and self-worth and all this, and it's very important. It's so important. But at the same time, you also don't want to be seen. A lot of us don't want to be seen too as these people who think too highly of ourselves, right?
Right. You don't want to be narcissistic.
Yeah, exactly.
But you also there's definitely a fine line there.
Yeah.
And I, when I was younger, and this might be just I don't know, you're a little bit younger than me, probably by a lot. You don't have nearly as many gray hairs, so I imagine you're at least 10 years younger than me, if not more.
I think we're right about the same 10 years. I think we are.
Yeah. But when I was coming up, like the mindset of selling out, like you mentioned, was so strong.
Yeah.
It was very much the idea of marketing your music as a musician when I was young, a teenager going into my 20s, was just gross.
Yeah.
Like, you didn't think about it. You didn't think about how you were going to sell records. You didn't think about that kind of stuff. All you want to do is make the records. And I imagine that mentality still exists to a huge degree with artists coming up. But I talked to some musicians that come in here, and they have a much more business knowledge, much more business knowledge than I ever did when I was at that point.
That's awesome. I'm so glad to hear that.
Because to hear a musician say like, oh yeah, no problem. I would love it if some company wanted to use my song in a TV commercial, where to me that would be like, your band is over.
Right.
That was the 90s version of getting canceled, was like, you sell out.
Right. Yeah.
Like, now it's no, selling out is fine. You need to pay your bills. Like, they congratulate you for getting some corporate, sponsorship of some sort.
Yeah, dude.
It's a different mindset, and I don't blame them, because how the hell else are you gonna make money? You can't make money selling records.
No, yeah, it's true. Yeah, you definitely don't. I think that probably if I would have had more business sense, which is funny because I just left Clemson at this point. I think if I had more business sense trying to make it in my music career back in the day, because when I was in Atlanta, that's what I was pushing.
Yeah. What were you playing, by the way?
Play guitar and sing mainly, but
sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No,
you're
good.
I don't even know.
No, you're good. No, yeah, see, exactly. My point from earlier, right here.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, like it's maybe I would have done better. I don't know. I'm not saying I would have made it, but at least maybe I would have made more money and like at least felt a little more comfortable with it. I finally gave it up. Not that I gave up music completely. I still play and, mess around, but I haven't played a show. And actually, funny enough, last show I played, it wasn't even a show. It was the interludes at Onda.
So you got up on stage with some people and just jammed out.
Yeah. Well, I was leaving one Wednesday, and Eddie White yells at me, and he's like, "Hey, Chad." I'm like, "Yeah, man, what's going on?" He's like, "Before you leave, do you want to play the interludes next week?" I was like, yeah," because I was like, I haven't played a show in 3 years at this point, and I was like, well, and I have a week to prepare. I guess so. But I mean, it's just the in-betweens, right? It's only like 4 or 5 songs. Sure. Let's do it. So yeah, it was, I gathered a friend to do some vocals with me as well, to do some harmonies with me. And, we practiced all week and just did it. But
wow.
But the point is that, like I thought, hopefully maybe I would have done a little bit better with it, because music's still a huge passion of mine.
I bet you there's a bunch of the people that we know that all have some sort of musical ability that we could try to get some sort of
I'd be down.
thing. We should just go. What's weird is something that doesn't exist here. This is here's another entrepreneurial thing that we could look for.
I love it.
I think, I don't know how much money there is in this, but it doesn't exist as far as I know.
Mm-hmm.
Is rehearsal space, a rehearsal studio.
True.
Like in New York, you have these amazing rehearsal studios where you go in, they have multiple rooms, they're all soundproofed. Mm-hmm. They've got full PA systems, they've got amps, drums. All you have to bring is like your guitar.
Yeah.
Your if you're a drummer, you bring your sticks and your cymbals, and that's it.
It's a great idea.
Everything set for you. And some of the rooms have performance spaces where you could actually do showcases. They have a stage built up. Oh, dude, they have lighting. Awesome. They really are set up for rehearsal for all levels, like tiny little rooms the size of my photo studio here.
Oh, that's awesome.
All the way up to like big performance spaces.
Dude, with the scene here, that could be a thing.
I think the
scene here is the scene here is so much deeper than most people realize.
Yeah, we just need some kind of like there's all these storage units. People use storage units in the South.
That was a big thing. I know. My organ used to sit. I have this little Hammond electric organ that used to sit in Corey Webb, aka Billy Fountain, before he's from here, Charleston, before he moved out to LA, in his storage unit, which was his recording space.
Yeah.
Which was a couple of doors down from Wolfgang's not there anymore, but Wolfgang was there.
That was Rialto Row. Now he's got the space or something.
Yeah. And I believe that's right. I believe that's what it was. Yeah, the same spot. But anyway, so I knew that was happening. Actually, I got introduced to that happening through Corey, because Corey and I are really good friends, and through us hanging out and me showing up, us going to a studio one day. But yeah, it's not the same. Like, at that point, I feel like everybody kind of had their own space and their own stuff. So it wasn't like a thing like what you're talking about, which would be a really cool asset for people to have, because if you weren't working with like somebody who was going to like record you or like producer or something, then you didn't, and you didn't have your own space, then you kind of just didn't really.
Yeah. And you just rent the studio space by hourly rate. It's kind of like a cheap motel.
I feel like it's a great idea.
But it's so much, you know what I'm saying? Like, if they can make it work in the expensive real estate of New York.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Then, I mean, gosh, why can't we figure that out down here?
Right.
I don't know why it doesn't exist. We got to figure this out. Maybe we should talk.
Maybe, we should. We should. We just have to put it in a central location, because nobody likes crossing 2 bridges, right? Like this.
You know what I found? I have not had any, because I'm technically, for Charleston people, I'm in the sticks up here in Somerville with this studio. Nobody's complained. I keep talking about moving my studio into like West Ashley or something like that.
Sure.
My photo studio, that is, just for the sake of being closer to the mass of people that I would be doing. But I haven't really had any pushback for people coming up here, which is weird, because I know how I feel.
Right.
I mean, Driving from downtown to here, it's a 40-minute ordeal.
Yeah, it can be for sure. But
especially if there's traffic.
Right. Yeah, that's the issue is when it's the traffic, right? Otherwise, it's not too bad. It's pretty easy peasy, but
it's not a hard place to get to. It's just
Yeah. Yeah, I felt that way, honestly, when I moved up here for the 6 months, like for 6 months out of the pandemic. I was kind of like, do I want to? But when I got up here, I was like, oh, it's not actually that bad.
The biggest perk to this location for me, selfishly, is that there's like a 7.5 mile running trail right behind here.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, dude.
Yeah.
I used to bike on it.
Yeah. So there's all these ball fields. It's fantastic space because I come here on the weekends and I go for my long runs. It's fantastic.
Awesome. I love it.
But anyway, sorry, we're getting very specific. This
is where I see all your Instagram story photos come from. Now I know where you're at.
Well, on the weekends, definitely. All right. So now that you've kind of figured out a path here for long term, do you envision yourself as a guy who settles down, has kids?
Yeah, for sure.
Really?
Always have. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I do. Maybe that's, why I'm trying to do what I'm doing right now. But I have this like kind of belief that I understand that it is not quite as simple to travel and have your adventures and stuff when you have a family.
Right.
But I think also it's partially a mindset, right? Because if you really look back, there's still cultures out there that are very nomadic. And, you look at like hundreds of years ago, thousands of years ago, how nomadic a lot of cultures were. I think it still can happen. We have this idea that
diplomats do it.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, it's very true. Yeah. Diplomats or missionaries or, there's all kinds of people that do that kind of thing. Right.
Mm-hmm.
But I would love to. In the past few years, what I've really thought that I would like to do is kind of goes back to what you talking about earlier, goal of buying a house is like, I would like to have a home base, but also have like, once the family comes along, I want to raise kids in a way that not only just is reliant on our public school system, but like also is like in books and stuff, because reading is amazing. And I think everyone should do it. Right. And I think, but like when it comes to textbooks and stuff, there's obviously something you learn from, but it's not the same until you get your hands-on experience. Right.
Yeah.
So it's like, you can read about like, oh my gosh, actually I have a story about this. You can read about like so there were these big windmills, right? Those huge windmills that they use for like electric power. You see a lot of them out west. Right. And, I remember reading about that in elementary school and seeing the pictures and being like, whoa, that's really awesome. Like in the textbooks, and always wanted to see them. Right. But it was nothing like when the first time I experienced seeing one in real life. And that's just a small one. Like I literally shed a couple tears. Like I was like, this is amazing. I'd forgotten that I even had a goal to see those, you know what I mean? As a child. But it's just a different thing whenever you can take I think you can take your kids and you can teach them about the culture in Southeast Asia, or you can take them and teach them a bit about it in a book and then take them to Southeast Asia to experience it. Right. And, I don't know. I just kind of believe the fact that you can do that. It's might not be cheap,
No, but missionaries do, like you said, missionaries, they're not dealing with a lot of money.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, exactly.
So,
for sure.
And they're usually a lot of donations and things like that. So,
that's true.
Yeah, they have to be very responsible with their money.
Right.
Yeah, I think it's very possible.
Yeah, you just have to monetize it.
Oh, you
have to be a travel vlogger family.
There you go. They exist.
They do.
There's people who like live in in a camper, like raising kids or just traveling on a boat.
Yeah.
There was a family that they retired early because they hit it big in the .com boom.
Oh
and
man, that's awesome.
Buy a sailboat and they raise their kid on a boat, that type of thing.
It's beautiful.
But I do think you have to find the right partner.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah,
that's
for sure.
You talk about there's one thing from playing in a band at a young age that is very obvious. I mean, there's one thing for people to be stuck in a lockdown for months on end.
Yeah,
being stuck in a van with somebody like right up and personal, and that's a true test of will.
Yeah,
and personalities, like whether or not, because not everybody can do that.
Yeah. I think that probably would be the true test, though, right? Like
Yeah.
take a few road trips with
You
each
might
other
have to
and see
take
what
some road
happens.
trips before you settle down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The idea is awesome. Like it's like saying it to certain people. They're like, you talking about like having discussion about things that you want to do in the future. And, there might be a young lady who's like, oh yeah, that sounds really cool, man. That'd be really awesome. But then you start dating and then you like realize further in the relationship that, oh, maybe they're not as cool with it as I thought they were.
Right.
they were cool with the idea of it.
It looked cool on Instagram.
Yeah.
But yeah, when they're waking up in the morning, they're literally trying to figure out how the hell they're going to take a crap. You know? And
dude, that's how you know when a girl's cool. So you can take her on a date camping and then she asks for the shovel.
Yeah.
She's like, I got to go in the woods and do what I got to do.
Exactly. But that's a different type of person, and a person who you can go through some adversity with too. The person who's not going to flip out when you get a flat tire in the middle of a stretch of nothing.
Yep.
Because
that will happen.
Oh yeah,
it happens. For sure.
What was when you were on your walkabout, as I like to call it? What was there a near death experience that you kind of just like, holy cow, how did I make it through that?
Ooh.
Or not near death, but like a situation where it was so adverse where you're like, I don't know how I even came across that.
Ooh, I don't know. There were a few cool things, I guess. I mean, there's definitely, I feel like it's a quick way to gain a lot of cool stories, I guess, Oh
yeah.
Yeah, there were some, I mean, so at one point I was hiking these 3 volcanoes out in northern New Mexico, and it's just like these 3 active volcanoes out in the middle of this just land, kind of like field almost. But obviously like more deserty. And I'm like hiking, like so it kind of looks like kind of dark on one side and really bright blue skies on the other side, which is kind of awesome. It was a really cool contrast, especially for photos. But then like, I'm like, well, I'm going to hike on. It seems like far away or whatever. I'm probably about the second volcano, like about halfway in, up at the top, like near the crater, and the wind's picking up. And legit, this was the first time. This is so funny, man, because like you grow up seeing in the cartoons and the movies, you see like the round tumbleweeds, like rolling, and you're just like, oh, that's just in the movies and stuff. No, that really happens, and it's awesome because you're like, whoa, I didn't realize this is a real thing. But all of a sudden, like a few tumbleweed go by, and all of a sudden a bunch of tumbleweed, and it's almost like it felt to me as I was watching them, like they were like a herd, like actual live animals. They were like running away from this storm, and this huge sandstorm hits me. I get up on the crater and I see it coming, and I'm like, oh God, I'm right in the middle. I can't go anywhere. So I either finish it out or I go back the opposite direction. It's going to be the same way either way, same amount of time. I'm going to go finish it out. So I'm like, just throw a bandana on over my face. I was like, doing it before 2020.
It's not cool.
Yeah, exactly. And, just try and have my camera out. So I like throw my camera back in my bag, like trying to protect all that. And this like huge sandstorm comes through, and it was crazy because kind of like a wall of sand. And I'm just like standing there and just like, okay, like, rubbing out your eyes and blowing out your nose is a really sexy time, And, but I just had to like kind of walk through it and wait till it passed. And so that was really kind of a weird, I don't know if I was like ever scared for my life. Right. But like, I definitely was like, ooh, this could be not great for me.
If you've
like,
never been in a sandstorm, that it's hard to describe. It's like nothing that you can experience on the East Coast.
Totally. Yeah.
It's so like
it's huge.
You're getting pelted with rocks.
Yeah. Exactly.
And they're going fast. It's really, and yeah, you can't see a damn thing. You can't move. You're pretty much just like, until it passes, you're pinned.
Exactly. Yeah, totally. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I ruined my sunglasses that day because I was like, it's dark now at this point with the sand coming, but I'm going to throw these on just to keep my eyes from, it's a weird thing. It's a weird situation to be.
Yeah.
So that was probably one of the ones that stuck out, definitely.
No one's taking a picture of the sandstorm, mid-sandstorm for their Instagram photo. Like, darn it, no one warned me about this.
Exactly.
How did this happen?
Oh, right. I'll have to find some videos and send them to you. I do have some videos of it as it's coming because there were just so many tumbleweed. I was like, I have to record this. This is crazy. It's like in the movies, I like expected a couple of cowboys to step out, like clanking with their hands on their hips,
Just a bunch of bison running away from it.
Yeah.
What is going on here?
Yeah, actually, that was probably the other weird thing that. So Ted Turner, you know who Ted Turner is, right? Okay, so Ted Turner has all of this land out west, right? And he has like these ranches out in like Montana and northern New Mexico and all these places. At one point, for the listeners, a lot of people probably don't know this, but he was trying to split the U.S. basically by buying land from Canada to Mexico that he owned. He wanted to own like a tract of land like that. And so he did a lot of buying, but this one piece of land was like 600,000 square acres. And I had a friend who was one of his bartenders, and we go back to like high school. We, knew each other back home, and she found out about the trip and she was like, dude, come out and hang out with me. And so it's this beautiful place that's just untouched. There's like 13 people that work on this entire 600,000 square acres. There's wildlife like you would not believe. And her boyfriend at the time was a hunting guide who grew up on that land because his mom worked on that land as like, I think like she cleaned or something, like the lodge or something. And anyway, so he, being the hunting guide, and growing up on that land, knows like all of this land, like inch by inch. And so people go out there to like also hunt because Ted Turner's he doesn't love, I don't know that he like, I don't know him personally, so I can't really speak for him, right? But I feel like he loves wildlife a lot, and he's also a hunter, but also I think he does it because, he has like a team of biologists who basically tell him like, hey man, if you don't kill this many of the animals in this year, then disease will come through and it'll kill them anyway.
They're going to suffer.
Right.
Yeah.
So anyway, bison are on this land, like the only at the time 100% still full-blooded American bison that wasn't like bred with cows or anything, which is amazing. And so I'm like, oh, well, I have to see this, So Brian, my friend's boyfriend at the time, is like, cool, man, let's go. I'm like, all right, cool. So we go and we park probably like, I don't know, like a quarter, probably like half a mile away. And we because you can't get up on them and you scare them. So like we're walking, we cross this creek over and we're like walking through this field and all of a sudden like I see him and he's like, there they are. I'm like, okay, cool. And he knew because he was a hunting guy. He like knew exactly where they were. So I thought it was a cool talent, but I was like, all right, cool. And so I'm like, going and I'm like snap, 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 snap. My shutter's going off and I'm trying not to be like too loud and trying to just take real light steps. And he's like, be careful. Do not get in front of them or too close to them because this stampede thing that you see in the movies and all cartoons is real. And I'm like, okay, man, cool. So I'm trying to be careful and stuff. But then finally I do get too close. And as I like take a step, they kind of, I guess, hear like the grass because it's like fall, winter almost.
Yeah.
Like,
so they hear crunching underneath.
Yeah, exactly.
Gosh.
And all of a sudden one of them's head perks up. And then all of a sudden all of them's head perks up. And then they just go woof and like just take off like this big stampede. And for real, like with the dust cloud behind them, I mean, it was crazy. And so that was kind of a weird, scary moment too. Cause I was like, oh, please God, don't turn this direction. Don't turn this direction.
Right.
But it was cool. I was like freaking out. I was like, no, I wanted to get this shot. And he's like, cool, dude, don't worry about it, man. Let's just go back to the truck. And so we get back to the truck and he knows exactly where they're going to go. So he winds up driving, getting on the other side of him, pulling up, and right where they stopped, he stopped. And I'm like sliding across the back seat, trying to snap out of the windows. That was awesome. A really cool experience.
That is awesome. The wildlife photographers, when you see some of the shots that they come up with, and you see how close they actually do get.
Yeah.
Because you think people are just have it in their head that they have some like telescope attached to there.
Right.
Now they might have a 400 millimeter or 600 millimeter lens. They still got to get real close.
Real close. It's crazy. It's like the fishermen who like let the fish acclimate to them being there and then get them with a spear. It's like, from what I've learned anyway, from what I've read of a lot of the wildlife photographers, it's like they become a part of like they're a hunter. They become a part of the scenery and they become a part of like, these animals like daily lives. Like it's crazy the amount of time that some of these guys like Nat Geo photographers and stuff like go and spend like months, sometimes years going in and out of this habitat and just so the wolves get to know them or whatever before they actually get a shot. Like that's crazy.
Yeah.
Like, hats off to you guys, dude.
But those of us who are sitting at home, you know, doing like you're experiencing now, like the work that you have to do to pay the bills.
Yeah.
You see those guys and you're like, oh, I wish I could do that.
You are. Yeah. I know, man.
That's why when I saw you had your tent set up at this art show next to your tent, next to your booth, basically.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, dude, you're rubbing it in.
I was just simply trying to give people an idea of how some of these photos, a lot of these photos came to be. And also I thought it was cool. I wanted to kind of like add to the aesthetic of like the outdoor adventure feel. Right. So, yeah. But.
So, I'll finish the photography talk with a little nerdy geek talk. What's your, if money's not an issue, what camera are you going to buy?
Oh man.
What kind of camera, or what do you even, does it even matter to you?
It doesn't.
Well, maybe it's a lens.
It's a lens for sure. God almighty, those things are so expensive. Yeah. I mean, honestly, to me, it does matter because it matters for efficiency in a lot of ways, right? Yeah. Because I definitely can do a lot more with the camera that I have now versus like the T3 that I had starting out, and certain lenses that I have now, especially a lot of the glass that I have now compared to what I had when I first got that T3 with like, the 18 to 35 millimeter, kit lens or whatever. But at the same time, I think that it's way more about the person behind the camera because, in the end, you can give a really awesome camera to an okay photographer or somebody who doesn't know what they're doing or whatever, and they might get lucky and get some shots. But you can also give a really outdated camera, or like you see this resurgence of like film and like people doing like medium formats and things like that, on like old medium format film and whatnot. And these people are able to like capture these insane scenes, with these cameras because they know what they're doing, right? With expired film. Yeah. Because they know what they're doing. And, so, I mean, yeah, but also I will say that there are certain things that I really love, certain features and benefits to certain features of certain cameras and obviously pieces of glass like lenses and stuff that make it easier. Yeah. So, I mean, I've really lately been wanting, and this isn't even that crazy of these aren't even really that crazy cameras, but it's just what's on my mind right now because I've been thinking about them a lot. The A7R3 and the A7S3, the Sonys. Yeah. God, man, those. For a little while, I struggled whether I wanted to go mirrorless or not, but because it's just that feel. But it's kind of like anything, like with technology, right? Yeah. It's kind of like it's the selling out thing. It's like, well, but honestly, the fact of how, like, if you've shot any of those Sonys, right, that those things are so fast. Like the focus time on them, like how quick, like you can hit the shutter and just hold it there. It's like, it sounds like a freaking automatic weapon. Right. Like it's insane, and just technologically, my camera can't do that as fast because I have a mirror that has to click, it has to move, right? It has to flip up. Yeah, it has to do the flip. So, I mean, those two are cameras that I've really thought about, and the S being because of the low light capabilities. And like doing the astrophotography and stuff some, it's not like my main thing necessarily, but I do like to do it a lot. And man, the low light capabilities on that thing is just unreal. Yeah. So I mean, probably one of those cameras. Yeah. For sure. Yeah.
It's funny how cameras or camera systems become such a personal thing. Yeah. I mean, I shot Nikon forever. And I still love my Nikon. Whenever I pick up my Nikon gear, I'm like, oh yeah, I used to love this. Yeah. But I went like total Fuji because I picked one up I was looking for a mirrorless camera, a small mirrorless camera. And when they started coming out with their mirrorless cameras, I picked one up and I was like, oh, yeah. Oh, this is so much. This feels like it's a part of my hands. Like it feels like it's part of me. Yeah. But Sony's, I could never get past the the idea that I would be staring at like screens and menus and trying to find things.
Yeah.
And
fair.
yeah. So because I still get that way even with the Fuji stuff.
Sure.
You know, once I get them set up the way I want them, then I'm good.
Yeah.
But
totally.
you know, I'd like to think of myself as somebody who's pretty technologically proficient.
Right.
But when I'm trying to be creative, I don't want to.
You have to worry about it.
I kind of romanticize the film side of things.
That's fair.
On that aspect alone, that you've taken away so much of the capability.
Yeah.
You know,
there's something to be said about something to strip down though too, and anything in life really. I mean, because we can get so bogged down from all of these things that's going on in our world. It's like, oh, these are really amazing things that we're doing and stuff. But then sometimes it's good to just like, you know, it's one of the reasons why I like the desert so much, dude. Going in the desert alone, no one else around, and knowing that there's probably not even another human around for, you know, some places maybe 50 miles is like incredibly freeing. Like it's a loneliness in a way I've never felt before, but not necessarily in a bad way. Right. And it's something about just stripping it down and making things simple, you know, like, oh, I'm going to have to take a shower and it's going to take me an hour and a half just to, you know, boil enough water to put into a shower bag to shower outside out here in this desert. Whereas like if it took me an hour and a half to get ready at my house every day for like, you know, in my apartment or whatever, then I would go crazy.
Yeah.
Right. Like, but there was something cool and calming and about slowing down. So I completely get it, man. I bought a film camera about a year and a half ago, an old SLR. It was a little Canon A1 for the same reason. Cause I'm like, I need to be able to like take and do what I do every day, but then also be able to
the personal work.
Yeah. And just play with it and just see how it feels. It's like analog and digital in music too. Mm-hmm. Same kind of thing. Vinyls or my favorite amp that I have is a Vox tube amp. Like
nice.
There's something warm and different about the analog portion.
Oh yeah.
It's just simple. It's like not all the bells and whistles. It's nice.
There's also that, like when you just mentioned a tube amp.
Yeah.
For the musicians out there.
Yeah.
There's a danger.
Oh yeah, for sure.
That thing could just shit on you.
Oh yeah.
It could just go straight to hell.
Oh yeah.
And and the color of the sound changes over time as that tube ages or it's warmed up or cooling down or whatever. You're in a different environment, like it's going to sound different. Whereas you play like a solid state amp, it's going to be reliable as hell.
Consistent, yeah.
It's going to be very consistent. Yeah. It's always going to work for you unless, you know, it breaks, but whatever. The likelihood of them breaking are so slim. But same thing with like, when you're dealing with film, like you have no idea like the chemical makeup of that film if the environment affected it in some way or if it got too close to something that changed it.
Exactly.
There's just so much
or
involved.
If it's going to make it back from the print shop if you don't do your own. Dude, I'm waiting for 2 rolls of film right now that have been gone for a month and it was supposed to take a week.
A month? Damn you, COVID-19.
I know. I'm like, did you guys lose my film? Because they don't have any record of it either. And I'm like, oh God.
All right, dude. Let's wrap this up. Let's talk. Let's give some plugs. All right. So the best way to find you?
Probably on Instagram. So I have a couple of different accounts. One is it's Chad Dyer, ITS Chad Dyer, and that's with an A, CHADDYAR. E is the way most people spell it, DYUR, but DYAR. And then Chad Dyer Photo is my other one. That's more so like properties and stuff. And then I guess the other way was you can go to my website, just Chad M, as in Martin or Michael or whatever. Chad M Dyer, DYAR.com.
Awesome.
Yeah. Thanks, man.
Dude, this has been great.
Yeah.
I love getting to know people I've known for a long time.
I love it.
And now I actually feel like I know you a whole lot more.
That's awesome.
This is great.
We'll just have to pretend to record more of these then. That way we
This has been my therapy, by the way, of dealing with this whole situation.
I love it.
Because when we're hanging out in a group of people, we don't get to have these kind of conversations. It never really focuses on one person. Mm-hmm. You know, you might say one little tidbit of anything that we talked about today.
Right.
And we might talk about one little thing for a brief before someone interjects or changes the subject.
Yep, it's true.
This is nice. I like this.
That is awesome.
I feel like everybody I know, I need to just get in here so I can actually get to know them.
Yeah, dude. I love it.
And then I can document it and hold it against you.
You remember that one time you said?
All right, man. Thanks.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it.
get going. Don't forget to subscribe to the show if you haven't already. And also, you can check out more at jwnpod.com or follow me on Instagram at joelatex. That's at JOEL, the number 8X. Have a great day. Peace!